واتل ما أوحي إليك من كتاب ربك لا مبدل لكلماته ولن تجد من دونه ملتحدا.
الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We continue inshallah ta'ala with Surah Al-Kahf, and we start at verse number 51 in Surah Al-Kahf. يقول الله عز وجل in verse 51 and 52: ما أشهدتهم خلق السماوات والأرض ولا خلق أنفسهم وما كنت متخذ المضلين عضدا ويوم يقول نادوا شركائي الذين زعمتم فدعوهم فلم يستجيبوا لهم وجعلنا بينهم موبقا ورأى المجرمون النار فظنوا أنهم مواقعوها ولم يجدوا عنها مصرفا. So that's 253. The transition of the ayat. And remember the day I, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, made them not to witness the creation of the heavens and the earth and not their own creation. Nor was I, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to take the misleaders as helpers. And remember the day He will say, call those so-called partners of mine whom you pretended, then they will cry unto them, but they will not answer them. And we shall put a barrier or so between them. And the mujrimun, the criminals and the like of them, shall see the fire and apprehend that they have to fall therein, and they will find no way of escape from there. This is the ayat in Surah Al-Kahf that shows the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that He subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one that ought to be worshipped. And after warning humanity and warning the believers from the enmity of shaitan, and that shaitan is an enemy, so take him as enemy, and that these are two separate things for a person to observe: to believe in the enmity of shaitan and to take shaitan as an enemy. So to take the means and the actions to protect oneself from the ways of shaitan, that is already explained to us in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, since the shaitan is ghaib, is unseen to us. But we get to see as if we don't need to see him, because we already have the wahy, the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, that explains all the steps and the ways and the tricks of shaitan. Then after that the ayah says, ما أشهدتهم خلق السماوات والأرض ولا خلق أنفسهم وما كنت متخذ المضلين عضدا. ما أشهدتهم, I did not make them witness the creation of the heavens and the earth. He says, يقول تعالى ما أشهدت الشياطين, because of the previous verse. So I did not make the shayateen witness, وهؤلاء المضلين, and those deviant ones. So the shayateen, the deviant ones, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying about them that they did not witness, they did not see خلق السماوات والأرض, the creation of the heavens and the earth, ولا خلق أنفسهم, not even their own creation, own selves. Of course, the believers also, but this is as a way to warn them when they arrogantly turn away from belief and humbling themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then this is as a way to warn them to remove this arrogance from their hearts and to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So ما أشهدتهم, that means I did not make them witness. He says أي, also the tafseer of this, أي ما أحضرتهم ذلك, they were not present seeing the creation of the heavens and the earth. And do people have to see it for them to believe? This is not a must. And this is, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed for this to be the case, then He would have made the human beings to see it. But this is not something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed for them to see. ما أحضرتهم ذلك ولا شورتهم عليه. No one was taking the permission or consulting with them whether should they be created or not. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala لا يسأل عما يفعل. No one is to ask, to question Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about His actions, and they are the ones to be questioned. So this is the reality. This is not something that needs to be discussed. You know, this is waste of one's time, let alone being an act of disbelief. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. And when we look at our own selves, وَلَا خَلْقَ أَنفُسِهِمْ, not even their own selves. Did you see your act of creating yourself? Nobody saw when they were created. So how can that human being become all of that arrogant? And he start talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without knowledge, or disbelieving in Allah, or associate partners with Allah. When you are so weak as a human being and inefficient and have no power whatsoever, that you did not create yourself, and you did not even witness it. You did not even see it with your own eyes. It's even if we go more and more, that person was just helpless the whole time, every stage from one stage to the other, and he's still helpless. And the moment of death comes when he cannot push that away from his own self. He's in full state of submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the only chance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give the human beings to choose between what is right and what is wrong, they forget all of this. And this is basically the ghafla. The kuffar are in state of ghafla, in forgetfulness. They don't see things. They don't witness the facts, that they have to build belief and actions based on these facts. So he says, فَكَيْفَ, if this is their affairs, if this is their case, which is everyone is like this, فَكَيْفَ يَكُونُونَ خَالِقِينَ لِشَيْءٍ مِّن ذَلِكَ. So how can they create any of this? So these partners that they take besides Allah, Allat wal-Uzza, human beings, prophets of Allah, they did not even witness their own creation. So how can they take them as partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when they did not create and they did not witness even their own creation? فكيف يكونون خالقين لشيء من ذلك بل المتفرد بالخلق والتدبير والحكمة والتقدير هو الله. So what is the meaning here that needs to be established? المتفرد, الفرد, the only one that is given the khalq, the creation, the tadbir, maintaining the lives of his creation, and the wisdom, and everything is by its measure and recorded, and everything is only by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, none but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. خالق الأشياء كلها. He's the creator of all things. المتصرف فيها بحكمته. He's the creator of all things, and he's the one that التصرف, again, as we said before, is like dealing with things, not created and left. But the fact that they're able to breathe, every breath they take, this is by the permission of Allah, by the power of Allah. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, He would take that away from them. And everything else. بحكمته, with His wisdom subhanahu wa ta'ala. فكيف يجعل له شركاء من الشياطين. So how can someone take shuraka, partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the devils, from the shayateen? يوالون ويطاعون كما يطاع Allah. They would have the loyalty to them, and they become obedient to them as a person is obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وهم لم يخلقوا, when they did not create, ولم يشهدوا خلقا, and they did not even witness any of the creation, ولم يعاونوا الله تعالى, and they don't help Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with anything. And this is by the mercy of Allah for people to use what Allah gave them. Allah gave them the aql to think, and the intellect to think and to reflect upon these verses, and to witness and to warn oneself, to witness how evil it is to worship other than Allah, how evil it is to be forgetful about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to protect oneself from such evil. And then he says, وَلِهَذَا قَالْ وَمَا كُنْتُ مُتَّخِذَ الْمُضِلِّينَ عَضُدًا, which means I would not take, and I did not take al-mudillin, the deviant ones, عَضُدًا. Al-adud is the support, the help. And this is the adud, this is of a person, the bone between the shoulder and the neck, so which gives the sense of the helpers, whether any form of help. He says أي معاونين, which means helpers. مظاهرين لله, they would be there for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala على شأن من الشؤون. He needs their help, he needs their support. حاشا وكلا, of course, how can something like that be attributed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or who deserve to be forgiven, who deserve to be punished, why would they invoke them besides Allah, and so on. أي ما ينبغي ولا يليق بالله, does not befit, and it should not be ever to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala أن يجعل لهم قسطا من التدبير, that He would give them even a small share of the tadbir, the creation and the tadbir. It's not left to anyone, as some deviants will believe that some individuals, they have a say in the tadbir. Tadbir, they're running the affairs of the people. This is such an evil and a kufr matter of belief when someone would believe such a thing. لأنهم ساعون في إضلال الخلق والعداوة لربهم, because they are Sa'un, they make sa'i, they are diligently working in deviating the creation of Allah. وَالْعَدَاوَ لِرَبِّهِمْ, they show their enmity to the Lord. فَاللَّائِقُ أَنْ يُقْصِيَهُمْ وَلَا يُدْنِيهِمْ. So what befits them is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يُقْصِيهِمْ. Al-iqsa is when someone is excluded, someone is kicked away. وَلَا يُدْنِيهِمْ does not make them closer to him. So عضد in the sense, of course, as we heard, no one whatsoever, even if it's the closest person to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're not helpers of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-ghani. And the meaning of they are not from those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would aid and support. Why? Because they are enemies to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when they worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which shows that once the heart is attached to other than Allah, then a person is bringing this enmity between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one worthy of worship. He says, so ما أشهدتهم خلق السماوات والأرض ولا خلق أنفسهم, not even their own selves, which is closer to anything, is also the ayat, وفي أنفسكم. You don't have to go too far to think. If someone talks about the creation of the heavens and the earth and how things happen, nobody saw anything. And they start making theories. MashaAllah, they think that they know all of that on things that they don't even know how far ago that was. And how can they figure out something that happens, Allah knows best, billions or whatever. This is just the heavens and the earth, or the earth itself. And they make it in such a way that they are sure of things. This is all arrogance of the human beings. If they put it in its perspective, maybe this, maybe that theory, maybe. But for them to speak like this, well, how about your own self? How about your own self as a human being? Did you see how you were created? You didn't see yourself how you were created. وَمَا كُنْتُ مُتَّخِذَ الْمُضِلِّينَ. Al-mudillin is those who deviate others. So for someone to deviate others, he has to be deviated himself. So Abdal is the one that is deviant. Al-Mudil is the one that deviate others. He do things to deviate people. He convey to them Ad-Dalal. And as there's levels for goodness, there's levels of evil. So the levels of evil that goes down is someone is dull in his own self versus someone that is not, it's not okay with him just to be like that. He has to also take the means to deviate others. وَيَوْمَ يَقُولُ نَادُوا شُرَكَائِيَ الَّذِينَ زَعَمْتُمْ. Then the verses goes to the day of judgment. And remember the day when يقول, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, نَادُوا شُرَكَائِيَ. Call upon those my partners, which is basically what you claim to be. الَّذِينَ زَعَمْتُمْ, that you claimed. فَدَعُوهُمْ, so that them call them, or they would call them. فَلَمْ يَسْتَجِيبُوا لَهُمْ, they would never respond to them. وَجَعَلْنَا بَيْنَهُمْ مَوْبِقًا وَمِنَ مَوْبِقٍ, or a barrier between them. He says here, وَلَمَّا ذَكَرَ حَالَ مَنْ أَشْرَكَ بِهِ فِي الدُّنْيا. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the affairs of those who associated partners with Allah in this dunya, وَأَبْطَلَ هَذَا الشِّرْكِ غَايَةَ الْإِبْطَالِ. And he refuted and made it batil, falsehood, this shirk in the utmost, in the most perfect way. And this is another thing, is when you read the Quran and you go through the evidences that are mentioned in the Quran with wahy, with intellect, to show how evil the shirk is, a person is left with nothing but to be upon the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَحَكَمَ بِجَهْلِ صَاحِبِهِ وَسَفَّهَهُ. And the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the clear judgment that he is an ignorant person, the one that associates partners with Allah. وَسَفَّهَهُ. He made him look like a fool, basically, when someone associates partners with Allah. When after that is mentioned, أخبر عن حالهم مع شركائهم يوم القيامة. He informed us of how their affairs is with their partners that they claimed in the day of Al-Qiyamah. وأن الله يقول لهم, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say to them, توبيخا, right, تبكيتا, to humiliate them as a punishment in itself. نادوا شركائي بزعمكم. Call upon these shuraka, the shuraka that used to call in the day in the worldly life. They used to call them, oh so and so, Allat, Al-Uzza, oh Hussein, oh whatever, Al-Badawi, or this, it's the same thing. Calling them in this dunya, call them in the day of judgment. See if they would hear you. So call them بزعمكم, that you claimed that you were calling upon them. أي على موجب زعمكم الفاسد, because you claimed, which is a corrupted zam, a corrupted claim, because there's no foundations to it whatsoever. There's no wahy, revelation from Allah. There is no Quran. There is no Sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ, that would make you follow. It's all your desires and the same concept of Iblis working on people to fall into the shirk. وإلا, he says, فبالحقيقة ليس لله شريك في الأرض ولا في السماء. There is no sharik, there is no partner with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the earth or nor in the heavens. أي ندوهم, call upon them لينفعوكم ويخلصوكم من الشدائد. Call them maybe so that they would benefit you or have salvation for you from the difficulties. فدعوهم فلم يستجيبوا لهم. So they would invoke them or call them, but they did not respond to them. The same way they never respond to them in this life. لأن الحكم والملك يومئذ لله, because the حكم, the judgment and the sovereignty on that day to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. لا أحد يملك مثقال ذرة من النفع لنفسه ولا لغيره. No one owns the weight of a mustard seed of benefit for himself or to others. وجعلنا بينهم موبقة, and we made between them موبقة. وجعلنا بينهم أي بين المشركين وشركائهم, between the mushrikeen, those who associated partners with Allah, and the ones that they worship besides Allah, we've made between them موبقة. And الموبق, he says, is مهلكا, a destructive thing. يفرق بينهم وبينهم, that separates between them something that is destructive. ويبعد بعضهم عن بعض, and it take them away one from the other. ويتبين حينئذ, and then on that day it will become clear the enmity of عداوة الشركاء لشركائهم. That day, in the day of judgment, then it becomes clear the enmity. They will be enemies to each other, in which in this dunya, this worldly life, they used to be loyal to them and thinking that they will have salvation from them. Then it becomes enmity between one to the other. وكفرهم بهم, and they would disbelieve in them. وتبريهم منهم, and they would disloyal themselves from them. كما قال تعالى, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وإذا حشر الناس كانوا لهم أعداء وكانوا بعبادتهم كافرين. When the people are gathered in al-hashr on the day of judgment, they become enemies to each other, and they become disbelievers in what they worship them besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why موبقا, as the tabi'een and the ulama of the tafsir Qatada, for example, saying al-mawbiq, mawbiqan, this is a valley in Jahannam. It's a valley of Jahannam. So the meaning of something destructive between one and the other. واد في جهنم من قيح ودم, as some said, from pus and so on. Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah says موبقا أي عداوة وجعلنا بينهم موبقة. That means we made enmity between them, as it's also explained in the last verse that we heard. So the Quran explains itself. So whether it's enmity between them, which is true anyway, or here in this context, as Ibn Kathir rahimahullah says, in this context, موبقا, it refers to al-mahlik, something that is destructive that is between them, whether it's a valley of Jahannam or something else, because there's no way for them to reach them. The same way that there's no way for them to reach them in this life. When someone call upon someone dead, or make an image of calling other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they think that their dua and their ibadah is reaching when it's not reaching. It's just waste. إن هي إلا أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان. These are names that you made them. This is fabricated, you and your fathers, your forefathers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not bring any authority over this whatsoever. So again, it's the wahy, it's the authority from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, this is their affairs and how they will be in the day of judgment. And then the last ayah, وَرَأَى الْمُجْرِمُونَ النَّارَ فَظَنُّوا أَنَّهُمْ مُوَاقِعُوهَا وَلَمْ يَجِدُوا عَنْهَا مَصْرِفًا. And the mujrimun, the criminal ones, they saw the hellfire. فَظَنُّوا أَنَّهُمْ مُوَاقِعُوهَا, then they would have certainty that they are falling in it. وَلَمْ يَجِدُوا عَنْهَا مَصْرِفًا, and they would never find any way to divert them away from falling into the hellfire. So he says here, أي لما كان يوم القيامة, when it's the day of Al-Qiyamah, وحصل من الحساب ما حصل, and the reckoning is already established, الحساب, وتميز كل فريق من الخلق بأعمالهم, and every group تميز, becomes separated by their أعمال. Again, people in the day of judgment, groups based on what? Not based on color of the skin or nationalities or anything, based on their amal. Kuffar, believers, then within each category is their own people, each one according to their amal, by their amal. وحقت كلمة العذاب على المجرمين, and the word of punishment is already established upon the criminal ones. فرأوا جهنم قبل دخولها, so they see Jahannam before they enter it. This is punishment after punishment. And Jahannam will be dragged in front of everyone in the day of judgment, as the Prophet ﷺ explained. So they see where they're going to be forever, which is Jahannam that no one can ever even see in this life and even able to comprehend the level of punishment and things in it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. فَرَأَوْا جَهَنَّمَ قَبْلَ دُخُولِهَا وَرَأَى الْمُجْرِمُونَ النَّارِ. So this is not being in the hellfire yet. This ayah is about them seeing the hellfire that they used to disbelieve in, then they get to see it in the day of judgment. So what happened to them? فَانْزَعَجُوا. So of course being terrified in a way that no one can explain. وَاشْتَدَّ قَلَقُهُمْ. And their disturbance and their misery becomes so intense. لِظَنِّهِمْ أَنَّهُمْ وَاقِعُوهَا. Because the yaqeen, the certainty that they have that they will be thrown into the fire. He says, وَهَذَا الظَّنُّ. This is called the word dhann. It depends on the context. This is linguistically, so it's not something that is twisting the meanings of things. It depends on how it's used. Al-dhann either refers to something that a person is not sure of, or something that a person is certain in. Right? So here, وَهَذَا الظَّنُّ قَالَ الْمُفَسِّرُونَ إِنَّهُ بِمَعْنَى الْيَقِينِ. It's in the meaning of al-yaqeen. It's the meaning of certainty. قَالَ الَّذِينَ يَظُنُّونَ أَنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُو اللَّهِ. You know, in the story of Talut and Jalut, the believers, those who, the few among the few, right, after being tried and tested. So the best of all of the believers, they said, وقال الذين يظنون أنهم ملاقو الله كم من فئة قليلة غلبت فئة كثيرة بإذن الله. Those who have certainty in that they would meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they said how many times small amount of people they defeated those who are greater number. So the point here it's mentioned قال الذين يظنون, not those who think there might be. No, this is in the meaning of certainty. So here also in the meaning of certainty, فظنوا أنهم واقعوها. Now once they see it, they know that they will be among the people of the hellfire. فأيقنوا أنهم داخلون. They have certainty that they will enter it. ولم يجدوا عنها مصرفا. So the yaqeen in this dunya, the certainty in the hereafter, the certainty in the Jannah and the hellfire, and then a person would act upon this, saves the person from وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, to have that yaqeen in the day of judgment, which is a yaqeen of no benefit. They saw it with their own eyes, but they would have the yaqeen that they will be among the people of the hellfire. وَلَمْ يَجِدُوا عَنْهَا مَصْرِفًا. They would never find عنها, away from it, the hellfire, مصرفا. Al-masrif is diverting anything away from it. أي معدلا يعدلون إليه. Path, something. Even the word al-sarf, the structure of the word, or even physically they use the word sarf for the sewer system, because it's getting things out, right? So, and you find something that you want to have a branch of something, you want to avoid something. ولم يجدوا عنها مصرفا. No way out from being thrown into the hellfire. معدلا يعدلون إليه ولا شافع لهم من دون إذن. No one would intercede for them without the permission of Allah. وفي هذا, and in this, من التخويف والترهيب ما ترعد له الأفئدة والقلوب. In this ayah like this, what's in it of a takhwif, the fear of Allah, the tarhib, to be in that highest level of fear. ما ترعد له الأفئدة, the hearts would be shivering from the fear, والقلوب, and the hearts. Because this is also explained in the Quran in more than one place, when the disbelievers, when the evil ones would get to see in the day of judgment their punishment before they are thrown in it. وتراهم ينظرون إليها من طرف خفي. Even the Quran explains how they, when it came in front of them, they look at it from طرف is the gaze, but خفي, hidden. So as if they're hiding themselves from seeing it, in that level of when someone, that's it, he gave up on anything. There's no way to resist. There's no hope whatsoever. It's going to be forever punishment as a result of what? As a result of what's mentioned before. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most just. So if they would have warned themselves and fulfilled the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most just in His punishment, and He's the most merciful subhanahu wa ta'ala in His reward. وَرَأَى الْمُجْرِمُونَ النَّارَ فَظَنُّوا أَنَّهُمْ وَاقِعُوهَا وَلَمْ يَجِدُوا عَنْهَا مَصْرِفًا. So when someone reads the Quran like this and have this reality of these verses, then you can talk about actions. This is how the actions becomes easy for the believer when they read this and have as if a person sees the day of judgment. How would a person like the affairs of those who disbelieve and those who sins and those who commit sins? How can someone like their actions and be affected by this and wish that they would be like them in matters of evil when this is going to be the affairs of such people? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from being among the people of the hellfire. So we'll stop here inshallah ta'ala and we'll continue inshallah ta'ala next time. بارك الله فيكم وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم ربنا بحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك.